Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. As always, my name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today with me is Liz Wyse, Etiquette Advisor at Debrett, and Sof Socratous, Head of Northwest Europe Sales Hybrid Work Solutions, Poly at HP. And we'll talk about both Poly HP and Debrett a little later. But first, let's talk about etiquette and hybrid meetings. We're having a lot more hybrid meetings nowadays. So let's figure out what to do effectively in hybrid meetings. So Liz, I'll start with you. Why is etiquette important for hybrid workers? Tell me a little bit more about that, especially in the context of hybrid meetings.
Well, I think good etiquette in general is a reflection of your personal brand, of your professionalism. It shows that you're taking both yourself and your colleagues seriously, and that you respect them. And in terms of hybrid workers, the etiquette that you display in a video meeting or an audio meeting is your way of showing that you're taking the company culture seriously and that you're taking your working persona seriously. So it's all about being considerate and courteous.
Okay, just to follow up, what would be the difference between a hybrid worker who's currently in the office versus a hybrid worker who's working remotely in their etiquette and their self-presentation?
Well, I think it's more about self-presentation and etiquette in that case, because in an office, you're already in a professional environment. You might have to be dealing with distractions like noise from your colleagues or people moving around behind you or sort of busy office background. Whereas I think the hybrid worker who's working at home has much more pressure on them to come across as professional because other colleagues are seeing them in a domestic environment, and they might see, signs of clutter, or they might hear distractions like pets or children or whatever, and all these things will undermine their professional facade. So I think it's the pressure is more on the home worker to project themselves.
Excellent. And talking about how to address noise at home, Sof, let's go to you and talk a little bit about the kind of equipment that companies should be providing to their employees for them to have an effective meeting experience that would create a more level playing field, let's say that between the remote workers, between the hybrid workers who are currently working remotely, who have that domestic setting to deal with and so on, versus the people who are in the office and who have an office background to deal with, so they don't need to come across as quite as professional because they're already in a background we associate with professionalism.
Yeah, that's really, really important for organizations as they start to implement hybrid strategies and start to look at their spaces. To deliver equality is absolutely paramount. So equality for those obviously in the meeting and for those working from anywhere else. And we mentioned home, but of course it could be a coffee shop, it could be in transportation, could be at the airport. So again, you get a lot of distractions depending on where you are. And those distractions, again, I've been typically in many airports recently, and of course there's an announcement of gate E, please attend, and so on. So you tend to go on mute very quickly, and then you're hesitant in rejoining and participating just in case you're disturbing the meeting. So it becomes a bit psychological. So again, in terms of organizations, as they look within their employees and how to deliver equality for those who can be absolutely anywhere joining the same call, and you want no one to feel like a second-class citizen, you want everyone to be heard and seen equally as well as each other. So if you look at the technologies today being provided, for example, the headsets is absolutely critical part of getting the right headset for the right, correct type of work style. So not one headset fits everyone. Some people like it 2 ears, 1 ear, on the go. So there's different types of personas. So getting that right is absolutely critical. And then speaking about when you're in the office, you know what the expectation and noise is going to be. When you're at home, you of course have that little bit of an unexpected dog barking, the noise from the front of the house and so on. So the headsets today and other technologies are really advanced to ensure and enable that the only thing that you're heard is actually yourself, is the only thing that's heard. So there is a noise barking. You've got all kinds of technology such as noise block AI. So you couldn't hear anything else outside this little bubble in front of my hand. So even if I was to clap, for example, yeah, you can't hear the noise. So this is where
Nice.
technology's really gone. And I think in addition to that, just to mention, when you start to look at the meeting rooms and meeting spaces,
Mhm.
if you're at the far end and you're working from home, you're normally one little tile on your screen and one little box representing yourself. And then you look on the other side and there's 3, 4 people within a room. So again, it could be a little bit intimidating if you're
Mhm.
on the far end trying to participate. Can they hear me? Are they having side conversations? So the
Mhm.
etiquette part's really important, that someone starts to look at the screen if there's any chat. If someone's raised their hand from home, okay, let's make sure that they're included. And with people framing in other technologies, what we can do, even if there's 4 people in a meeting room and 1 person working from home, we can actually display all 5 people individually in
Mhm.
a tile on the screen. So all of a sudden, the shoulder height is equal to each other as to is the head. So everyone starts to look and feel the same. And then all of a sudden, if you are working from the far end and you're working from the home or from the coffee shop, it's okay. You feel equal to anyone else.
Now, let's talk about whose responsibility it is. Now, I helped 22 organizations transition to figuring out their long-term hybrid work arrangements. And a conversation I regularly have with my clients is, should the workers be responsible for getting the equipment, or should the company be responsible for getting the equipment for the workers to support their work from home? I mean, honestly, we all know that there are a number of bosses who would prefer their workers to spend more time in the office. And they know that for the sake of retention and productivity and worker engagement, they should allow workers to work more on cutting costs from the office. They should allow workers to work more remotely, but they kind of resent it. And so there seems to be a hesitation among companies to pay for this equipment. So tell me a little bit more about what you're seeing in terms of the responsibility for getting this equipment. And what's the business case for companies to actually get this equipment for their workers?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. But however, having said that, we did several surveys actually on recruit, retain, and grow as an organization, and the employers did actually see more than 70% of employers saw an increase in productivity as people were working from home. So,
Mhm.
so the concept of we'd rather everyone be in the office, I understand because of the connection that people have, and it's easier from a culture perspective to create and build something that people can see and access as such. But there is an acceptance that hybrid is here to stay. There is an acceptance that if you don't have a hybrid strategy, if you don't allow people to, from a homework balance perspective, have that flexibility, then of course you're not going to recruit, you're not going to attract, and you're not going to retain the best talent. So that's an
Mhm.
absolute given now. In
Yeah.
terms of the technology, it's actually in the employer's interest to ensure from a productivity perspective, everyone has the right equipment to make sure that they optimize their time, to make sure that they look professional, sound professional, and they participate in a way that allows them to deliver the absolute best experience, regardless of where they're sitting from. So again, in terms of where the ownership sits, it
Mhm.
absolutely sits with the employer,
Mm.
no doubt. And we've seen recently during the pandemic, of course, there was a chipset shortage. There was this
Yep.
huge increase in demand in personal devices. So the world ran out almost of headsets, of course, and
Yeah.
so on. So everyone purchased what they could from anywhere, and it didn't matter whether it's a professional grade. We just had to keep the business going. In fact, that was just
Mhm.
critical. Can you speak? Can you access a platform and communicate? Of course, post-pandemic, I say post, we're still living through it, but
Sure.
post-pandemic as such, where we live today, and people are returning to the office with the same equipment, of course, that they purchased before. That was a personal purchase. The productivity's decreased because as people sit in an office with that office environment, there's no ANC, noise cancelling tools and
Mhm.
software built within their headsets. All of a sudden, actually, people have been suffering a little bit from noise rage, and that was one of the things that people had actually cited as what they're not looking forward to when returning to the office. They're looking
Mhm.
forward to the camaraderie, but actually, I don't want to be sitting next to someone that I've booked my seat because now, of course, I've got no dedicated seat and the person beside me just happens to be very loud, you know, speaks all day on the telephone. I can't
Sure.
concentrate on my work. So again, what we're seeing actually is the onus back on the employees to ensure from a premiumization perspective, they're going to equip their staff with professional grade headsets as an example. Otherwise, as you can imagine, people will resent going back to the office because the experience
Mhm.
has to be equal or richer to what it is at home. Otherwise, their hybrid strategy won't work.
And it's not simply in the office. So I definitely advise my clients to get equipment for their staff. And what I tell them is that getting the equipment for your staff is important, not so much for the staff. I mean, let's say good camera, good lighting, good microphones. The staff are not going to be the ones, the individual employee is not going to be the one who suffers because of those. They're not going to even notice the lack. It's going to be their collaborators who suffer, their internal stakeholders, their team members, or their external stakeholders, the people they're trying to sell to, or the customers they're trying to support. So it's definitely an important issue from an employer perspective. I agree with you very much there. Now, talking a little bit more about the etiquette, I want to talk, so Liz, you talked about the etiquette from the individual perspective. I want to talk about the etiquette from a group perspective. What kind of group etiquette should there be in a hybrid meeting?
Well, I think everybody in a hybrid meeting needs to be aware of all the participants and where they're calling from and what particular issues they might have. I mean, one participant might be in a taxi, one might be in a cafe, 3 might be in the office, one might be at home. As we've said before, you need to be able to kind of level the playing field. So that requires people being sort of tolerant of other people's difficulties and accepting of them. And I think it's very important, at the outset of a hybrid meeting, to announce if you've got any particular issues, if you're in transit, or if you're likely to be disturbed or whatever. All these things will mean that everyone feels like they're participating equally. It's obviously more difficult for people who are at home to react to, say, a group of people who are in the same room, who are obviously reading the room, reading each other's body language, able to pick up on signals more easily. And I think everyone needs to be aware of that. And I think that's one reason why we said in the guide that you mustn't be frightened of gaps in the conversation, of pauses. You need to give people space, especially if they're a remote participant, to interject and to insert themselves into the meeting process. So I think the people who are working from an office do need to have that awareness, and they need to be trained to have that.
Okay, and talking about the report, so this is a report on how to do hybrid meetings effectively, how to have these interactions. Can you tell me the 3 most important takeaways that you would have from the report?
Well, I think the first one is to be self-aware. I mean, the fact is, you're on screen, your face is clearly observable by all the participants. You are being watched. And you're being observed and you're being judged. So, you've got to be, on the whole time. If you switch off or you get a little bit distracted, people will see that. So I think that's the first very important thing. And the second thing, well, they're all interrelated. I think the second thing is that as we have more and more hybrid meetings, people tend to get a little bit over-relaxed and over-casual about the whole process, to the degree where they'll do other things while they're attending a meeting. So they might be writing an email or looking at their phone, and you quite often, I mean, if you haven't got noise cancelling headphones, you quite often hear people sort of clattering on a keyboard. I mean, all of these things are very, very rude. It's very rude to pick up your laptop and walk around with it because the postman's just knocked on the front door. So, stay focused. Don't take this whole technology for granted. And I think the third thing is that you've got to approach hybrid meetings with the same level of professionalism as you would have face to face. I mean, it's not an exception, it's a norm now. So the more sort of courteous you are, the more focused you are, the more considerate you are of other people in the meeting, the better it is for building team solidarity. Nobody wants to be working in an office and see someone who's sort of half in, half out of a meeting at home, not concentrating, bad body language, lots of distractions. It's very, very dispiriting for the people who are really trying to be professional participants. So everybody really needs to pull their weight, and that will help build a team spirit.
Excellent. And can you tell a little bit more about the nature of your expertise? Tell me a little bit more about Debrett's and how it provides etiquette guidance more broadly.
Well, Debrett is a very old company, actually. It dates back to 1769, and it started off as a directory of the British peerage and aristocracy. So it was only after the Second World War, really, that it started to offer advice on what we call correct form, which is the correct ways of communicating with within all sectors of British society. And as time has gone on, we've tended to respond to changes in society, an increased informality, and so on and so forth. And we've begun to evolve etiquette advice about sort of all aspects of British social life and British professional life. I mean, we have just published a book on business etiquette last year. So we basically act as general advisors on etiquette.
Excellent. And so can you tell me a little bit more about your work at Poly and how this being informed by etiquette drives the new products that you develop? So tell me a little bit more about Poly for folks who don't know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the HP Poly portfolio now, as we recently got integrated and acquired by HP, helps us deliver really the entire working solutions. We're manufacturer of the broadest portfolio within the industry, which includes audio, video, compute, print, and headsets now as such, which can be deployed across many ecosystems. So if you're an organization that uses a Zoom platform or a Microsoft Teams platform and so on, again, even beyond that, Google, we have devices which can give you that native experience as such. And not only can we provide the devices, but we can actually fulfill the end-to-end requirements, so including planning, deployment, managing, global support, and for our professional and managed services group. So as an organization, we've got quite rich heritage stemming back from providing Neil Armstrong with the transmitter, which of course came back with the first words from the moon as such. So an organization with really rich heritage, actually, from Polycom, HP, and Disney, and of course from Plantronics. So again, we've got quite rich heritage, and what we do as an organization in terms of as a vision, and looking to become that hybrid solution provider to many organizations with guidance and support, is really to help organizations bring together those spaces, the technology and the people, where people comes first, to really help them deliver equality and the best output from a hybrid strategy.
Excellent. And do you have any last words to leave our listeners with as we are wrapping up?
I think from my perspective, what I would say is hybrid's absolutely here to stay. Finding the right partner to partner with long-term is critical. I meet so many customers, enterprises, large and small, and public sector organizations that are really trying to work this through together. There is no perfect solution. People are still creating the blueprint. People are still testing and trying and learning from each other. And we really do have quite a wealth of experience now in understanding what organizations have done, what they've learned and what they've delivered, and what best practice looks like. And again, with Debrett's commissioned output and what they've delivered, really helps deliver that right experience within the meeting room and the meeting standards to ensure that you really optimize in terms of your hybrid strategy.
Excellent. And Liz, any words from you?
Well, I would just reiterate that every individual who participates in this kind of technology and this kind of hybrid working is responsible for sort of curating their own image. And that means ensuring that their technology is up to the job, ensuring that they look professional, that they're reasonably well dressed, and ensuring that they're polite and considerate and respectful to the other meeting participants. And one very easy way of doing that is to focus and to concentrate and to take the whole thing seriously.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, both, for sharing your wisdom. That was very helpful.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, and thank you to the listeners and viewers for checking out another podcast episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the episode wherever you check this out, and make sure you leave a review, which helps other folks discover the show and helps us improving the show. Until next time, I hope you have make the wisest and most profitable decisions, my friends.